Welcome to the Nerd Party.
Oh, Miles here.
Your Owl Post for the week is freshly delivered, and I am just one of the hosts here, Matthew Rushing, and with me, as she is always, the incredibly talented and just wonderfully friendly Andrea Coffman. How's it going, Andrea?
Hello, Matthew. How are you?
Well, I'm doing well. Since we last spoke, it's an entirely new year, so, man, it's been a year since we've talked to each other. Worst dad joke ever. Yeah, I'm not even a dad. That's right. I was, over the holidays hanging out with the nieces and nephews, so lots of bad dad jokes came out. So, did you have a good holiday season?
We did. I actually got sick for a lot of it, so that was unfortunate. But all in all, I can't complain.
You know what's funny is I actually got a little bit sick as well on my trip down to Texas, and oh my gosh, I haven't had that kind of sickness in a while, so it was very frustrating, and just starting to recover, so that's nice.
Well, it's always terrible when you're not at home too, because all you want when you're sick is what you're used to and comfortable, and not being in your own bed with your own stuff. Like, it's uncomfortable.
And the hard part too is just when you can't sleep, you're just tired, and so, I felt very worn out for a few days, but thankfully it's ending and we're back here at Owl Post, and we want to thank a couple of people here who gave us really fantastic reviews over on iTunes and Apple Podcasts for a holiday treats. So we had one new review that said concise and insightful 5 stars. Kansas Librarian, they said, I've listened to several Harry Potter podcasts, but since I'm a total Harry Potter junkie, I'm always on the lookout for more. I recently discovered Owl Post, and I've been greatly enjoying binging their backlog of content. The episodes are short, but Matt and Andrea pack in a surprising amount of depth and nuance to each chapter. Owl Post is a worthy addition to any Harry Potter fanatics podcast rotation, which, wow, there's a lot of Harry Potter podcasts out there, so I feel very blessed to have somebody say that they feel like this is a worthy addition. Thank you so much.
Yeah, agreed. Thank you.
Man, 5 stars too. And another 5-star review from Adam Conti. And they said, well done and entertaining podcast for new and returning Harry Potter fans. My 5-year-old son loves listening to your shows with me. It's a great introduction to this universe and gives a lot of depth for a lifelong fan. Keep up the good work. We look forward to hearing your passionate and unique take on these books every week. Thanks for all you do. Well, we appreciate that, and really cool that we're bringing father and son together. That makes me feel really good.
Agreed. I always like hearing about the little listeners too, enjoying things. I think that's just always so cute. So,
yeah,
it reminds me to wash my mouth. Good. So,
yeah. Well, I appreciate the fact that this is a podcast that just about anybody can listen to, and so, and I think, one of the things we really strive here to do is to make it as evergreen as possible, in the sense that, when we talk about the books and the series and everything, this is something we want people to be able to talk about or listen to anytime. So really a show you can pick up anytime. So we really appreciate those reviews. Help us out like they did. Give us a review and a star rating over there, a written review and a star rating, and we'll read out what you had to say on the show over there on Apple Podcasts or iTunes. You can find us on Twitter at Join Nerd Party. You can also find us on Facebook at facebook.com/The Nerd Party. Both places to like and to follow us to see what's going on with everything Nerd Party-wise, with all the podcasts that we've got going on over there, as well as everything Owl Post related. And if you want to talk to us, definitely use the hashtag Owl Post as well. Drea and I will definitely catch up with you there. And then you can find us online at thenerdparty.com, and possibly, maybe you want to send us an email. You have some thoughts about what we're doing or anything that we've talked about on the show, and you can do that. Go over to thenerdparty.com/contact, choose a show, choose Owl Post, and then that email comes to Dre and I, and we'll be able to talk to you there. So Drea, when last we spoke, we had gotten to the Ministry of Magic, and we ended that chapter with Harry being late.
Yeah, because those a-holes had moved and rescheduled his hearing.
Yes, they had. And so Harry arrives, somewhat breathless, and ends up in the same chamber that he has seen before in Dumbledore's pensieve.
Oh, we didn't know that yet, because that was like the first line of the chapter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, which is really, very interesting. And I think one of the things that's fascinating about this is the fact that they're having this Wizengamot here.
Yeah, it just stresses the severity of the situation.
Mm-hmm.
It takes it from a minor offense that everyone's sort of rolling off the cuff,
right,
and has this equivalency to wizard hearings during, like the witch hunts, if you will, during the last time that Lord Voldemort was back. So it has this instant, kind of feeling of dread to it.
Yeah. I think there's a severity to which this case is being taken here by Fudge specifically. I think it really sets the stage here for what's going to happen. And I think it's interesting too. This chapter is short, but what happens in this chapter sets the stage for everything else that's going to happen in the book. And it really sets the stage too. We've talked about the political undertones and the ramifications of this series, and kind of the fact that politics plays a huge part in this book. And this really just shows how politically motivated everything that's happening is, and that's why we're in this chamber. That's why we've called the entire Wizengamot together, which is, yes, we're turning this into something that's not supposed to be. And I feel so bad for Harry, because he's like, I'm so sorry, I didn't know the time had changed. And there's just this cold voice saying, well, that is not our fault. An owl was sent to you this morning. Take your seat. And we're like, really? Was an owl sent? Because I don't remember Harry getting one. And
when I don't know. It's one of those things where, you did that on purpose. All of this was done on purpose. Everything here was done on purpose. And so you feel for Harry in the fact that, this is sort of the first time that his fame is being politicized. It's been sensationalized. It's been, sort of portrayed in the media. But this is sort of the first time it's actually being politicized. And it's not in his favor. And it's kind of the first time where being famous and being Harry Potter is not advantageous for him. He's kind of learning what that's like. Besides all the times they've tried to kill him because he's Harry Potter. But I'm more referring to the wizarding community as a whole versus, one individual. This is kind of where the tides turn for Harry. And we learn about pretty much how drastically those tides are turning.
Well, and it's, as Harry kind of sits down, we see the fact that there are about 50 people here, all there to judge him. We see the fact that Fudge is there. We recognize Fudge, although he's not smiling at Harry this time. We see Ron's brother Percy, and Percy is pretending like Harry doesn't even exist. And so, Harry feels very alone until this moment where, after Fudge has said, this is the disciplinary hearing and all, we get witness for the defense, Albus Percival Wulfric Brian Dumbledore, which I don't know if there's a more whimsical name than Dumbledore's full name, but it's amazing.
It really is. And I think this might be the first time we hear the full name.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Could be wrong, but I think this is the first time we hear his name in its entirety.
Mm-hmm.
No, name.
Yeah, it is a long name, and it's just a funny name. And so, I also love that Fudge is like, you got our
you got
message.
Our owl, and he was like, nope, I just happened to be sitting around super early for no good reason. And he's not being sarcastic. He genuinely figured something like that would happen. So he showed up crazy early and just sat around.
And I love the way that Dumbledore says it too. Oh, I must have missed it, but it was a lucky mistake. I arrived here 3 hours early. Just so fantastic. Classic Dumbledore there, playing the system perfectly. Like you said, you get the sense of Dumbledore realizing something like this is probably going to happen. And then we finally, we read the charges in full about the fact that Harry willfully and knowingly, in the full presence of a Muggle, produced a Patronus charm, which breaks all these under, age wizardry, sorcery, restrictions and everything. And then it's so interesting because, and you remember in Star Trek 6 where, Kirk and Bones are on trial, and the guys and they're watching the questioning, and the questioning they're leading questions, and there's no chance for them to answer. And that's exactly what happens to Harry here. Fudge keeps answering questions, which just lead into the fact that it makes it sound really bad what's happened. And to put it the same way they did in Star Trek 6, it's a damn show trial. Like, this is just a show trial. This is just for Fudge to be able to try and nail Harry finally, and to really, what we realize here, it's to put a chink in the armor of Harry and Dumbledore and to make them look even worse than in the press by making Harry out to be that liar that Fudge wants him to be. And to make him that reckless person, and this is just his way of trying to do that. And I think what we see here in this questioning is really that case, is that Fudge, he just wants to be able to discredit Harry, so then he can discredit Dumbledore, so that he can discredit the claim that Voldemort is back.
I do love, though, in the trial, that they read the charges on him, and then the original person, Amelia Bones, who's supposed to be doing his hearing, is like, I'm sorry, she's really impressed that he's able to produce a full corporeal Patronus charm. She's like, wait, like it was a stream? And they're like, no, it was a stag. And she's like, you produced like an actual Patronus? And he's like, yeah. And she's like, ooh, like she has this like feeling of awe, and she's just incredibly taken aback by this, and she sort of becomes his, I don't want to say advocate, but she sort of becomes his ally on this wizarding panel. She sort of, that makes her believe him that he's a qualified wizard. It sort of substantiates all the other things she'd already heard and gives her less reason to believe some of the rumors. And it's just interesting how that sort of naturally comes by him just being honest about, like, yeah, that's what I could do. And we also kind of learn how significant that ability is and how that's unique to anyone, let alone a kid still at Hogwarts. So I thought that was a really interesting little quip that she kind of slides in there. And that actually does paint the stage a little while later, for Amelia Bones and that family and what happens to people like that, as we continue on in the storyline. So
yeah, I agree with you. It's really neat to see that in this sense we are kind of calling out that Harry is unique. That this is very and what I love is that we're kind of building on exactly what we got told in the Prisoner of Azkaban by Lupin, which is this is very advanced magic. That the fact that there are adults who may even struggle with this, and so the fact that Harry can do this does show us that Harry has some really unique talents when it comes to magical ability, and it shows his strength. And so and I really liked that. And I also really liked Amelia Bones here because too, she's the one who kind of helps with the questioning in the sense that she's like, wait, there were Dementors and Little Winching? And that leads us down this whole path of like, Fudge again trying to downplay Harry and to show, I see what you're trying to do there, because Dementors can't be seen by, by Muggles. Right. And so there are no other witnesses. Therefore, Harry must just be making this up. And I love, again, Dumbledore's kind of being like, pardon me, but we actually do. We do have a witness other than Dudley Dursley. And I just love how she explains Fudge's face just kind of like going slack, like every ounce of color just kind of draining from him, like, dang it.
Well, and I love that when you think about it. So we learned in earlier chapters of this book that Dumbledore had a watch on Harry while he was at Privet Drive, right? And you just assume that it's to protect him, right? That was kind of the impression we've been given, right? Mundungus Fletcher left, and Mrs. Fig couldn't protect him from the Dementors. He had to do it himself, right? Like, there's this idea that he needed to be protected. And now we kind of are shown that it's not about protecting him physically. It's about the fact that, Dumbledore was waiting for Harry not to do something wrong, but for something to happen. Right. And Harry to sort of be set up, and that the reason he's got a watch on him is not to protect him physically back. And it's just like that twist, like he is just 2 steps ahead of everyone else. And, you're learning he does things very intentionally, which I think is really unique. And it unfolds slowly as you kind of go through this. And you're like, oh, so that's why he made sure someone was watching Harry at all times. It wasn't to make sure he didn't get kidnapped or anything like that. It was to make sure that no one could pull anything over on him.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and I think, the moment that Dumbledore realized, because Harry told him that Voldemort was back, he just expected something like this to happen.
Right.
And so, and I love that, Mrs. Fig, her presentation, I love that Harry is even listening to her and he's like, oh man, she sounds like somebody who's never even seen a Dementor. And then that moment where she starts to describe exactly how she felt and about how she started to relive, these awful things and everything. That's when it turns, not only for Harry, like, okay, this is actually good, but it turns for, Madame Bones, who immediately her eyes widen and she realizes, okay, this woman is telling the truth. Like, she knows what happened. She knows what went down. She was there. Because of her experience. And so then we start this argument about whether or not the Dementors were there by coincidence or whether they had been ordered by the Ministry. And my favorite thing here is watching Dumbledore tie Cornelius up by his own logic.
Yes. Because he knows that he can't just tell him that they're outside of the Ministry purview. And I love that he uses giving them the benefit of the doubt as a cover for really showing them how little they know about what's going on. Where he says things like, well, I'm sure the Ministry will investigate, like I'm sure you wouldn't want that. Like giving these things where he's painting these as a positive thing, but really he's backing Cornelius into a corner where he has no choice to either accept the fact that the Dementors are not controlled by the Ministry, or to back Harry and do something for Harry with this investigation, right? It's just, he basically gives Cornelius no good choice in his eyes as to what to do from here. And I do love how just Dumbledore has this way of getting what he wants without being mean or rude or bullying, and he doesn't argue or fight. He just simply presents his argument and covers all sides and has great approach. It's a very eloquent way of handling these things. He's always so prepared. Prepared.
Yeah, he's like a Boy Scout in that way. It's absolutely true, because, what Cornelius says is that, of course, the Dementors aren't there by some sort of happenstance, because they're under Ministry control. And so Dumbledore says, okay, well, if they're under Ministry control and we've determined that they were actually there, then who in the ministry is ordering Dementors to Little Winching?
To the suburbs of Britain.
Exactly. And so, like, he ties Cornelius in these knots because you can, and this is the thing that I think is so disgusting we see in this chapter, is how a person in a government who is there to supposed to keep people safe is so willfully willing to try and believe what they believe their truth is, which is that Voldemort is not back. And they will do anything and everything to keep that being what everybody in the public knows, because they don't want to deal with the fact of the reality of what the truth actually is and the danger that is. And so I love the way that she is playing on that whole thing about, look, you can't deny what reality is telling us. You can't deny what the actual truth is, because you end up in this place that not only leaves people in danger, but it leaves the government in a place that once this is found out, who's going to trust it? You know? And so it just shows you that danger of just living in a world where you only believe what you want to believe instead of what is actually true. And she does a really great job here of just showing what a fool Fudge is. And the foolishness of not wanting to deal with the reality of the situation, even if it's bad, you know? Because in the end, you're only making it worse. And then not only that, but on top of that, we get this picture of Fudge, who he starts talking about how laws can be changed, and like the absolute scariness of a person who's so willfully not willing to believe the truth that they're willing to change and to bend laws to make sure that the truth doesn't get out by harming somebody or you know, putting themselves in a power above, you know, like being able to take care of somebody like Dumbledore and to shut them up.
Well, in the last book, he said, you know, in the hospital wing, Fudge told Dumbledore, "Can you just imagine how, you know, what this would do to my political career if it was true?" And there's also an element of this sort of like self-survival going on, that he is so attached to this power and this position that he's not willing to do what's right because it's not easy and it's definitely going to cost him. Yeah,
no, absolutely. And he's willing to start, you know, changing laws to make sure that, you know, people, you know, are shut up if that's the case. And I also love too how, and this is the thing that I thought was so interesting too. Okay, so we can't nab Harry then on this, but we start trying to, you know, grasp at straws at all of the other things that he's done, like the last time that he had the underage, you know, wizardry act thrown against him, and how, you know, Harry's like, but that was a house elf. And he's like, you see, a house elf in a muggle house, seriously. And again, Dumbledore's like, oh, well, you know, that house elf in question is actually at the employ of, you know, Hogwarts School, and I can summon him here in an instant to give evidence if you wish. And like at every turn, Cornelius is shown to be somebody who has no regard for the truth. He only wants what he wants to be true, because that keeps him not only in power, but it keeps people placated. And like just the danger of that.
And I think there's a part of all of us that can relate to Fudge too, right? Maybe not to the extent in that, you know, we have the whole control of a ministry beneath us, but we've all been blinded by that feeling in that moment where like you are grasping at anything and straws to make whatever stay the same or to avoid something, or you get so focused on the outcome that you'll do anything to make it happen. I think that's just a feeling we can all relate to, and it's a feeling of like helplessness and desperation, and you do really dumb things during that time. So I think it's also one of those moments where like maybe not on the scale we're playing with here, but I think everyone can kind of relate to how Fudge is feeling right now, which makes you a little empathetic, but at the same time also going, how dumb can you be? Because this will never work out the way you want it to work out.
Yeah, I do. I like what you're saying because I do think it makes us have to reflect inwardly to see where those times to which, we're doing possibly the same thing. And it could be smaller, but it's still that case of, oh, we want to have something be true, and therefore we are willing to do whatever it is we need to do for that to be true, regardless of whether or not it actually is true. And the knots that we will tie ourselves into to not have to deal with things that we don't want to deal with. And they might not have the ramifications of, the entire wizarding world and the world at large. But here we see Fudge willing to do that, where he's to total disregard for the truth and its impact on the safety of the people that he was elected to serve and to keep safe. And so I think it's fascinating to see that play out. And of course, in the end, he is left in the lurch because his play against Dumbledore and against Harry doesn't work. Amelia Bones calls for the vote, and many more hands go up for Harry to be cleared of all charges. Whereas we do see Fudge and this witch that, we meet here, Dolores Umbridge and a few of her ilk, all trying to get him convicted, and they don't have enough votes, and therefore Harry is cleared again of all charges. But I don't know. I have a feeling that we just might see this Dolores Umbridge again.
Agreed. I feel like she might become a part of something.
Well, I think this chapter also leaves us with the feeling that things are probably going to get a lot worse for Harry and for Dumbledore after this. That I feel like we're in for a really rough ride for those two in this book. If this is any indication of what Fudge is willing to do, I don't think this is the end of that.
Agreed.
Which kind of leaves us on a bum. But we'll have to be back next week with Chapter 9, The Woes of Miss Weasley. But until then, Drea, if anybody in this new year wants to catch up with you and see how things are going and talk to you about anything Harry Potter related, where can they find you online?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at PCFChick or on Instagram at Drea Coffman, and Coffman.
And you can find me on Twitter, Instagram, Letterboxd, Tumblr, all under the name MattRushing02. You can also find me here doing aggressive negotiations on the network with John Mills, talking all about Star Wars each week. I'm over on the Track FM network doing a couple of shows. One is The Orb with Chris Jones about Star Trek Deep Space Nine. And then I do our General Geek Show, which we talk about all the fandoms we love. We have a great year coming up for you. I hope you'll check it out. Each and every week is just something fun and new in General Geekdom, and it can be from any franchise, so you just never know. And then, of course, doing cinema stories with my good friend Courtney, as we'll be returning for the new year, and that's where we talk about films through the lens of faith. But thank you so much for checking your owl post.
Mischief managed.
Join the revolution. Join the Nerd Party.